having a strategy, to me, it's a bit like having a blank page and working out what you really want to do. You know, it's identifying where you've been, what you actually think about the events that you're running, and how's that going to look, and what is the overall goal that you actually want for your events in the forthcoming time. You know, you're working your short and medium term goals, and how that actually works. You know, it's it needs, for it to be an effective strategy in this moment, or in any moment, it's got to be agile and nimble. So you can't be so set in your ways that this is the way we're going to do it, and you know, that's the way it's going to happen, kind of thing. We reviewed our strategy in August, and we were starting to do all the implementation, you know, of the micro steps towards our goals starting this year. We'd finished the event program, all that kind of thing. I'd made a decision to change registration software system, so we thought, right, we'll look at all of that. And then COVID happened, so that strategy has kind of been put in the file drawer, and we're now working on our COVID recovery plan, and how we can actually generate income or revenue that we haven't necessarily you know, thought about generating in the back half of this year, just to keep things turning over. Because, you know, none of our we might have maybe 3 conferences this year. Some of them are going to go virtual, and that's about the limit that we're actually going to be hitting. So it's on our side of the business, it's quite a challenge to actually completely change your outlook on all those kind of things. So we'll look at putting together a high level strategy for your events. Talk about the research and maybe some of these serendipitous things that you can do while you have this downtime. And we're going to spend a bit of time talking about virtual, face-to-face and hybrid meetings, and where things are looking at for the recovery, and some of the processes that way, and what at least some of the information that I've been able to get on a global scale about getting everybody back. Okay.
As the VP of marketing, I had it all figured out. I could execute on any marketing plan sales handed to me, no matter how complex. So when my CEO called me into his office to discuss our strategy for the next 18 months, I was ready to get started in the next big thing. He outlined 2 complex plans and asked, "Can you pull off both?" I reassured him, "Yeah, of course we can do that." He paused for a long, agonizing moment, and then the yelling began. "Executing both of these strategies would put us out of business. You don't have a clue about what the purpose of marketing is. All you're doing is executing a series of tasks like they're a big to-do list. You're dangerous as the head of marketing." Well, the case can be made that my CEO is a jerk. He did challenge me. I was doing a lot of marketing things. Why was I doing them? The truth is, most companies don't have a strategy. They view strategy as a set of performance metrics and goals. But strategy doesn't just define what you do. It's as much about what you don't do. According to Richard Rumelt, a strategy requires 3 key elements. First, a diagnosis that defines the challenge. It's a realistic understanding of the current state of the business and market. Second, a guiding policy for dealing with the challenge. A policy directs action while also ruling out other approaches. And third, it's a set of coherent actions to accomplish the policy. This is how you overcome the complexity and conflict that plagues most companies. So, let's say an e-commerce company finds that its monthly sales are falling. They decide to focus on improving the average cart price. They make a plan to set a dollar threshold for free shipping and add a related items module to product pages. While simple, the example defines the problem, clarifies direction, and outlines the key action. Marketing's role is to help accomplish the strategy, to come up with tactical executions and test hypotheses. But the strategy is the North Star. It's the foundation for building a plan that is both focused and achievable.
Okay, so as the video has very succinctly said, strategy is, to my mind, it is finding solutions to problems you didn't realize you had. And in all honesty, I'm a big fan of a BHAG. If for those who don't necessarily know what a BHAG is, it's a big, hairy, audacious goal, and it's something I learned about 8 or so years ago when I was on an international board and we were setting the strategy for the association. And the prime example of a BHAG for me is that if you think about Queen, as the Queen, rock band Queen, after Freddie died, they all thought they weren't going to fill another big stadium, and then they came across Adam Lambert, and their big, hairy, audacious goal was being able to go back into big stadiums. And that's where it is. And to look at your events program, I think while you can, and you so many of you have been putting on a lot of webinars and thinking about those, but I think some of this has been a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to actually keep people communicating and get the feeling that you are there with them and helping and all those kind of things. And I think that is absolutely fantastic. But as you've all been commenting, that's actually going to change now that we're approaching whatever this new normal is going to look like. And think about it as the time is pressing the Alt Control Delete buttons on your event program. Start with a blank page. What are you trying to solve? What are you trying to achieve? How are you going to achieve it, and who's going to help you get there? And I think it's a group program rather than an individual program. So I thought I'd take you through just the simple form that we actually put together when we've developed our strategies. It's I made it in Excel because I'm an Excel girl, but what we do each year is we have an overarching theme for the year. So to me, this is something that you can actually apply for your overall strategy and also do it for your individual events to see what goals you actually want to set for those as well. So we have our overarching theme, and that's, ours has always been the sum is greater than the parts. So we're all about team activity and those kinds of things. And then our goal here is our determinate goal for the business or for the various strategies that we're actually wanting to play. So for your example, it could be something that you want to create 15% profit based on your turnover. So what we then do with those is we have 4 objectives that we actually define to then get to the major goal, and we put our objective in here, and then the various strategies to actually lead back to that objective. And all these tasks down the side are the micro steps, if you want to call it, to actually get you to that point of getting your strategy completed. And that way I've expanded this even further, is I've added another column to identify who's going to take responsibility for all of those tasks. So it's quite simple. It's something that we review every week in our WIP meetings to just keep everybody on step and understand where everybody's working in the same place. Because to me, there's no point sending out a document like this and then 2 people working on the same micro task and they didn't actually realize they were doing it. And what we've also done for each of the objectives is we've got a champion that isn't me, which is quite nice at the time, to have to lead those objectives to get to the goal. So it's not overly complicated. I mean, the most complicated part is actually thinking about the objectives and the various strategies that go with it. But we'll talk later on some of the thinking behind getting to that point. For setting up the strategies and the tasks that go with it. And the good thing about something that is reasonably simple like this is that it's very malleable, and we can get in there and change things, delete. I mean, we've worked out in our COVID strategy, our COVID recovery strategy, is that 2 of our objectives can actually be mashed up into 1. And now we're looking at refining that again to create the one big objective. And you can just create more sheets for the objectives that you have. We've got no more than 4 because it's probably a bit tricky to work on any more than 4 at one time for the any kind of capability. Your you may only have as many as 2 for your events, or for your individual events, but the overarching big strategy could have, the big goals could actually have 4 strategies behind it. So now we're going to attempt this the VBox thing again. So if you've still got that on your app, I will change the screen again. Okay. So most of us haven't really got one properly developed. So great opportunity at the moment to start one together. Right, back to the other. I'm getting very good at this whole sharing screens business. Okay, so how do we get to this strategy? And I think that is part of the whole process, and this is where we're going to start to think about some data measurement and those kinds of things, because that to me is part of the most important process, is actually having the conversations and finding out what's going on. So I've separated these into 5 pillars. My go backwards to go forwards, talk to stakeholders, set your broad event goals, and then set your individual goals. And the most robust strategies you get is when you actually challenge all the options that you have, and respectfully challenge, obviously, but you've got to you've actually got to openly question and debate these processes rather than just saying yes. And I think it's really important with a lot of this stuff that you're actually including the entire team in the process, not just the high level of it. And I try to be a facilitator in our event strategy, or our strategy discussions, rather than necessarily the dogmatic leader, telling everybody what's going to be happening, because 5 or 6 heads are definitely better than 1. Okay. To go going backwards to go forwards. To me, you've got to look at what you've been doing. You've got to look at the last couple of years of how your events have been running. What do you want to change? How do you feel about that? What are your numbers like? I mean, have you actually done an analysis of looking at your profit year on year, your costs, your delegate numbers, the mix of where people are coming? I mean, we have one client that has a really low non-member attendance, and it is one of those things that is a fantastic opportunity for them to get non-members to participate, or even get prospective members to join the association, to become members, to get the cheaper price. But for various reasons, they haven't actually got there yet. But it is one of those terrific opportunities to engage non-members. We've another one of our associations that we do a little bit of association management for and run their conference, is that their membership purely just gives them a cheaper price for the conference. And because we don't know, their conference it's a skiing conference, so we're not, up until the last 48 hours, we didn't actually know whether we'd be able to have it. And we've already had people wanting to suspend their membership because the only reason they do it is to get the cheaper registration for the conference. So, you know, it's how we actually look at that. And now that New South Wales ski fields have made their announcement, we've now got to go out there and communicate that with the delegates of how people are going to buy their ski tickets, because that's all going to be, they've got 50% less capacity this year than they have in other years. So it's some of these things that you actually have to consider. You know, in a lot of the budgets that we do for our long-term clients, I always have the past figures sitting in the Excel spreadsheet with them, so they know what their venue cost them last year, or their speakers, and all some of these other costs, because you know sometimes you wonder why you didn't make as much money as last time, and you know it can just be the sheer difference of you've paid for more speakers, or more speakers are not going to speak for free anymore because they've now realised that there is an income in it for them, and the value of their knowledge that you actually have to account for. But you know, you may not necessarily be happy with that. You may, and then the other thing that we quite often do is measure the attendance from each state and identify where everybody's coming from, so you can actually understand that, so you can market differently, and looking at you know, definitely looking at the member and non-member pickup, especially for, you know, membership-based associations, you know. And it's one of those things that when we have a few of our clients who, because they're talking to their membership so often, we don't have we don't have as much influence as probably we would like in some of their marketing, and they're not getting a lot of non-members coming through. So, you know, to me, that's a massive opportunity that's lost in getting people there. The next thing to me is a must is talking to your stakeholders, especially at the moment, keeping sponsors and other partners informed, knowing where you're at, and having open and honest conversations with them. And, you know, I think not necessarily in the last couple of months, but what's going to happen in the next few months is that once we've got to, into the best guess of where we're actually sitting, you're going to have that time to sit and have a proper conversation with people. I mean, I'm a bit zoomed out, I have to admit, but I get to the point where I'm going, I have a list of people I need to have a telephone conversation with, but you get to the end of the day and go, I have spent the entire day either looking at a screen or talking at a screen. It's time to actually go and see some fresh air. And that is part of what's going on. We were on a Zoom meeting yesterday, or webinar yesterday, and people are getting their education while doing their exercise at the same time. And this person didn't have their mute on, and the presenter could actually hear them walking on the treadmill and panting. So I thought that was a little bit funny. I mean, I've actually used a lot of this time to get my exercise regime back going, and I was expecting a call from someone else, and a client rang me and I said, I'm on my walk, I'm going up a hill. So, you know, that's just life, and how you actually keep that all going. But it is such a fabulous time because you've got, and hopefully we'll have more time once you know where your things are at, to actually invest in those relationships. And just so everybody knows, I can't look at the chat and speak at the same time, but I'm happy to respond to anything directly when at the end, or flick me an email. So it'd be good to actually think about, if you're going to go down this road, of what your BHAG is and what you're wanting to achieve for your overall event program. You know, it could be anything. It's, you know, whether you want to make $250,000 profit, whether you want to have a higher degree of non-members coming because you're not getting them and converting them to members, and those kind of things. It's not for me to set your BHAG. It's actually up for you to set it. But it really, the whole idea of a BHAG is it has to be a little bit out of the box and what you really would like to do, because quite often you can actually get there. When I was my first stint on the council of IAPCO, when we set the first 5-year strategic plan, is about educating PCOs globally, and we almost got there, but it was pretty audacious of what the growth was. And we just finished our second 5-year strategic plan in September, and that's kind of been put to one side at the moment while most PCO companies around the world are fighting for survival. Okay, so once you've got your BHAG, it's then really important to look at your individual events and the goals that you've set for them. And, it is about creating those communities and how you're going to do virtual and subscription based and how they're going to be delivered. And it's also looking at, it's not just about the budget, but I sometimes think that, the budgets of individual conferences are bigger than most small businesses run every year. And to me, you've got to give it that level of attention, because the risk can be quite high for a lot of associations. And, you're spending a lot of, your members' money, and the responsibility that you have when you're looking after other people's money is actually really important to me. And I mean, I probably look after our clients' money better than I do my own in some respects, but, that's where you want to be. And, it's to set your P's about product, place and price when you're setting up the marketing, and looking at your event from a strategic thinking perspective of what you're actually wanting this event to achieve. And that is not something that's done that often, and it's something that a high level discussion with the event partners and the overall team is something that needs to be considered before, I think, taking on most events, of what you're actually how you're going to measure the ROI if you don't actually think about what you're wanting to get out of it. And that, as I said before, the Excel spreadsheet can work just as well for individual events as it can for your overall options, your overall strategic plan. And you do need to challenge everything. It's sometimes the first idea isn't the best idea, and you've got to have these open and respectful debates about how you're going to get to these points. And I think, the key thing is respectful debate about this. It can't just be, no, you're wrong. You've actually got to keep, if you asking people why they think this is possible, and just keep drilling down, even go as many as 5 whys to see whether you can actually get to that point, to drill down even further for the reasons why you're doing what you're doing. It could be a worthwhile investment to bring somebody in from the outside to actually look at facilitating this process, so you can all participate rather than run it and not have other people and not be part of the communication. That's what we did for our original strategic plan and the reset. We brought in an outside facilitator to help us through that program, but at the moment, because we're doing strategic, putting the plan together so often and rejigging it and reevaluating it, we're leading it internally, and everybody's taking turns to actually to conduct the strategy meetings that we're having with our work in progress meetings every week. Okay, back to VBox now, and I will share the screen for another little poll, and then we might have a quick here's a bit of fun. Okay. Haven't finished Tiger King. Couldn't do it. Okay. That's interesting one. And the last one, just as a bit of a indication. Yeah. It's a lot of digital going on at the moment. It's pretty full on, and that's a lot of time putting all of that together as well. Okay, so we will go back now. Does anyone feel like they need a quick toilet coffee break, or we're happy to keep going? Right, John's happy to keep going. All right, excellent. Okay, no way to go but digital. I've been a big fan of the whole digital process for a very long time, and I think there was questions about going virtual and how that's going to actually work. So what I think I'll keep pressing on, but I might go off script a little bit here and talk about the serendipitous moments that we've had this year about changing from our event registration platform to Events Air, which I made the decision in December, and we thought, because the front half of this year front half of our years are normally quite quiet because that's the way things work, but we thought, right, we've got time to implement this new system, and then COVID came out, we're all in our training, and then Events Air have now developed this on-air virtual conference platform. So I'm not sure how many have actually seen it. I think Tanya, she's still on. I think I've seen her in some of the demo systems and all those kind of things, but it's definitely the platform that we're going to be heading towards for our digital conferences and going virtual. A lot of our clients who have suggested going virtually, they have said, look, we're getting so many CPD things on webinars, we're digitally dead. We can't actually take any more webinars on. But the good thing about the on-air program is it's not just a one-way communication. You actually have the ability to be able to have a two-way conversation, have some virtual networking, have an exhibition, live exhibition conversations with your exhibitors, or your exhibitors, you can choose that. We can do digital e-posters and small meeting groups as well, to be able to have those small round table conversations. You can also bring in Zoom meeting, you can bring in Zoom webinar. what I really have liked about it is that they've not created a new broadcast platform. They're using existing broadcast platforms like Zoom or GoToWebinar, but they've just brought it all together in the one hub for you to be able to run an overall conference in the digital space. And they are now working, their version 2 model will actually be having a hybrid platform together. I mean, to me, running, as soon as I think we can meet face to face and we have the ability to meet face to face, all of our members are wanting to meet face to face, and we're all kind of craving that human interaction, and the whole, no giving anybody a hug or a kiss or whatever is actually quite it's actually quite daunting, really, because it's such a habit. I go to my parents' place and I won't go and give mum a kiss. It's like, no, I can't do that. They're old. I have to look after them. But it is such a it's such an innate part of who we are. And when you meet European friends and it's the 3 kisses and all the rest of it, it's like, oh God, no touching. But that, I think virtual will always be here, and how you plan virtual. But I honestly think until things settle down, a hybrid offering will always be in the place, and how you actually offer that hybrid is going to be the important part of it, because you need to me, be able to have that, make the hybrid participants feel as though they're actually part of the whole event and can engage in the whole event, which is the lovely thing about this system that they haven't even finished the release yet. So which we're going to get out. I think we're going to get our hands on it next week, and as their final cut of how that is actually going to work. And it is one of those things. I know somebody was asking questions about how you actually run a digital conference, a virtual conference, rather than you can't do a full day. I mean, I think we had several hours of webinars yesterday, and your eyes get to the point going, nah, I don't even watch that much TV when I'm binging these days, let alone sitting there trying to learn something. So it is about finding the balance of all of that and doing it short and sharp. So you might actually end up doing it over more days, but having 2 or 3 hour blocks to give people a break. Some things I've seen done now are which I think is a fabulous idea, is companies, catering companies are actually putting together virtual conference meal boxes, and they'll deliver it. And what I'd really love to see is, if we went down that path, finding a partner in every state to be able to deliver something that's on a similar kind of vein to all the delegates, so they can actually have their morning tea and feel like it's they're part of the whole overall event. But it's got to be more than a webinar. That's my fundamental thing about a virtual conference. It does have to be more than a webinar, because you may as well just put it up, record and watch it at any time. You need to be able to have that interaction, which is fundamentally important to be able to create those networks. There might be digital networks, and you might, when you actually meet them face to face, but in this training that we've done for the on-air program, the first demo we saw of it, we didn't quite realize that the virtual networking was going to be with your camera right in front of people that you'd never met before, which it was a little kind of, oh right, oops. Now we've worked it out, and when we've been running our own test events for our assignments, we've now put an instruction manual together to tell people that their camera, they will be meeting people when in the networking thing, and you will actually see them. So don't be don't be alarmed by that. And and some people can choose not to do the virtual networking. So that's the lovely thing about it. If you're a little introverted, you can actually choose not to actually participate. And what we're actually also doing about finding the balance and doing digital is, one of our conferences that we've had to postpone, we had 1,000 delegates already registered, and we're expecting about 2,500. We've actually opened up a webinar series for the delegates with some of the speakers that were coming out. And then that way they've added that for free for them. And we've, of that 9,000 delegates, we've only had 50 cancellations. So it's been a really great way of keeping the community involved. And, if you aren't going to do your conference this year because of the timing, there is a way of getting some of that income and providing with a different level of membership benefit of being part of that group and feeling that they're actually part of it. And it's gone great guns. So, it's a really nice way of people still feeling engaged with the organisation. Won't work for everybody, but for this group, it's working really well. All right. Another little YouTubey.
Hi, I'm Daniela. I'm Head of Artist Development at Scarlet Entertainment, and I'm here today to talk to you about virtual events. So, what is a virtual event? A virtual event is an event that happens in a virtual environment online, not in person. Now, there are two main ways of doing this. Firstly, live streaming of the event in real time. Secondly, through on-demand video. This means that you can access the event after the event has happened in real time. Why would you go virtual? Global reach is a really good reason to go virtual. It means that you can expand your brand to large audiences worldwide. Secondly, risk management. We're all thoroughly aware of the current coronavirus situation, and it means that you can hold an event virtually. Thirdly, virtual events are carbon-free. This not only saves you time, it saves you money, but it also saves the planet. So in conclusion, virtual events are a really great, forward-thinking, on-trend solution for your business. The show will go on.
Okay, last poll for the day, I promise, and I've noticed that we've got only about 15 minutes to go, so we can have a look at this, and then I'll whiz through so we've got plenty of time for questions. Okay. So this is a word cloud as well. So just put in the first couple of things that come to mind. Okay. Yep, I think that's where we're all kind of thinking and how we're actually going to deal with all of that. And in some ways, I think the venues are now starting to come to grips with what their venue is going to look like, and the space and the requirements and I think they're just starting. My kind of idea with all of that is that they're just learning. A lot of the venues are actually coming out to us as users of the venues and what we're wanting, and how that's actually going to work. So it's in very early days to actually get people going. And the other thing about a lot of attendance is that if they have been in a sector that has been particularly, restrained in trade, then what does that actually look like? How can people A, afford to pay for it, and B, lose the time out of their organisations, especially, if you're in a medical specialty that has, they lost the elective surgery. opportunities. So a lot of them are just getting back into their level of practice, and can they actually afford to take 3 or 4 days out of their practice to attend a conference, in a face-to-face conference, let alone will we be allowed to actually travel. New South Wales, Victoria, ACT are okay, but we've got a client for a conference in Brisbane in February that they're actually wondering whether they shouldn't move, thinking that some of their members, they've got a greater membership base in Melbourne, and it will be easier to run the conference in a hybrid kind of fashion because they'll have more delegates there, and nobody's quite sure when the Queensland borders will actually be open. So that's where I think, Europe seems to be in a different phase to what we are. From what I've seeing at the moment, a lot seems to be starting to reopen. Our international organisation is still planning a hybrid event, but they've actually switched venues because they're wanting to mitigate their risk of the venue hire at one venue over another. And our conference is normally in February, so winter in the Northern Hemisphere is relatively inexpensive for some of the hotels, and they're desperate to get people in there. And I'm not sure what I will actually do, because if we're still on 14-day quarantines in hotels when you come in, I'm not leaving this country. That means a 1-week trip will actually cost you 3 weeks out of the office. So that's the other thing that we've got to think about. Now there's a few other little things, but I think Tony, we'll send out these slides to everybody. Yes.
Yes, of course.
I will do that and get that out. Get that over to you and Kerry today to send out to everybody. But I think because it's it's 20 past 11, and there might be some questions, we might open the floor.
Excellent. So does anyone want to jump in straight away? Just feel to unmute and jump in. That's absolutely fine. I guess, Sarah, one thing, I might just kick off a question. One thing, I guess, that was raised earlier was around this monetizing of digital events and monetizing our, online offerings. What are you seeing as a trend? And, virtual events are not free. They do cost money to put on, and particularly, platforms that are great, but when they're costing us a lot of money, but there seems to be some reluctance to pay for, it. What I guess advice would you have around that?
And it really depends on the market. And because a lot of people have been offering a 1-hour webinar free, or as opposed, it's actually then the point of changing that to being a member benefit. And if you're not a member, then there is a cost, like everybody's doing. Some of the surveys I've seen, people are prepared to pay a reasonable amount of money because they're valuing the education that they're getting. So, you take out the cost of the food and those kinds of things, you can charge. You can't obviously charge what you would charge for a face-to-face conference because you're not doing food and all that kind of, offering food. But if, there are some fairly hefty production costs if you go into the studios and you have a professional camera person and those kinds of things. So my best guess is you could charge somewhere between 60 and 70% of what a normal fee is if you were offering, a couple of day program.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to tell you that I can't see people have got that much money. Like many companies, they've just had to shut down so much. They haven't got the money to spend on it. And so that's been one of the issues that we've faced, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Especially in the boarding schools. John, the current view of the government reopening business. What I can tell you is that Business Events Council of Australia have actually have made a submission to government to not put conferences in as mass gatherings, because we do have the ability to be able to contact trace everybody and scan people in and out, and identify who's going in and out of each room. Where I think we're going to be finding extra costs is actually having people manning those doors and having the barcode scanners, so you actually know who was in what room at what time, so that if there is an outbreak, you've got the ability to be able to match it. I know, I mean, I haven't used the Events Air app that they actually have as part of their offering, but they have come out and said that they will be putting a contact trace component into their app building. But you can also provide that level of checking with using beacons and those kinds of things as well.
Sorry, to add to that, do you get a sense of whether the government is receptive to Beaker's kind of views and submission?
I haven't had anything else out of there, John, yet, but I think they're trying. And every Friday there's a Tourism Australia webinar on the update of where things are at. And the good thing, forget about the political persuasion, but Scott Morrison used to work at Tourism Australia.
Yeah.
So he actually
gets it, doesn't he? Yeah.
He gets it. Simon Birmingham's been on the call twice. They actually get how important this sector is to our economy. And my gut's telling me that they can't actually have the borders shut down forever, because there's going to be just people going broke, and they're going to be supporting all these people on unemployment benefits, and that the cost to the general economy of shutting tourism down is exhausting.
John, I would add to that. So we, Aussie is part of, member of the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So they've got a tourism task force. They've actually publicly put out a little bit of a roadmap at the moment. So it's not the same as the government's roadmap. It's a suggested roadmap, but pretty much is in line with Becca. So again, this whole concept of separating business events from mass gatherings. Part of the issue is yes, we can contact trace, and that's great, but it's the movement of people in and out of venues and around venues. So it's not so much sitting them down in their seats in, say, an auditorium in a socially distanced way. Their issue is around the random contact of people, and potentially different groups in like your conference and my conference in the convention centre at the same time. That's some of the hurdles that they're trying to get over. And so part of it is, working with them to show how we can mitigate those risks.
Yeah, something came out this week with ICA, which is the International Congress and Convention Association, the International Convention Centres, and UFI, which is the International Exhibition Association, about trying to get things back on and suggestion for venues. And I'm getting a lot of emails from venues saying, well, how do you think this is going to work, and so on, and how traffic movement and all those kinds of things. And I think there's going to be a balance of what's required today as opposed to what's going to be required in 3 months' time, and how we're actually going to manage that. And the food issue, I don't think the venues are actually ready yet. And David, to answer your question, at the moment I haven't had a venue come in at a high rate for the social distancing. I have to say, and if there's anyone who's taken, I know we've all taken hits individually as groups and all that, but the venues have been, in my experience, absolutely outstanding in postponing and holding things over, and working with all of us to get the best outcomes for our clients. And I hate to think what is going on in a lot of those organisations, because they can't do anything. They can't hold their events, and the way that they have actually helped out and become so malleable with this whole thing has been phenomenal. And I think one of the things about all of when this all started was, how you actually behave in this environment is what will dictate how you will recover from this, and the loyalty that you show and the understanding that's been shown in very many organisations, two ways, from us to them and them to us, and those kind of things. And in our position, having to manage expectations between our clients and the venues, where we started moving things August, September, right when this thing hit. And obviously everyone's a bit nervous and a little bit on edge, but to be able to explain to our clients that the government's just shut them down, they're going to need to worry about next week's events. They'll get to us, but we just have to give them time, because not only did they have to start shuffling everything, they had to lose half of their staff, and that was the hardest thing, of that level of understanding. So my skiing dentist, that conference that we have is at Thredbo, and we spent most of January wondering whether we'd actually have Thredbo because of the fires, and now we're actually wondering whether we can go up there because of COVID. But they've come to the party with room hire and those kind of things. They're desperate to try and get some conferencing back in their venue. And as I said, to our committee, we almost have a moral obligation to try and get up there and help them rebuild after the fires, because this is an area that's had nothing this year. And that's how we've tried to behave.
Awesome. I'm conscious of time. We're nearly at time. Is there anything else, any further questions, anything left unanswered? You can always email me and I can get back to you. But yes, we will give you the slides. Yes, we will send out the recording. I know it's hard. We are all here though. We're in a virtual room.
Yep. Virtual coffee.
Me with my crows as my workmates. Nothing. All right. Well, we might wrap it out. Thank you very much, Sarah. We will send out also Sarah's contact details to you if you do have any other questions that you wanted to answer, if you wanted to have a chat to Sarah. I know that ICMS going to put out a special offer to the Aussie community, so talking about that strategy work and having a bit of a hand, and looking at that poll, most people's barriers to doing a strategy is yourself. So I know that they will have be able to help you out with that. So thank you again. We really hope that you guys are doing okay. From an Aussie perspective, we're always here as well, so certainly reach out if you need anything, and look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Take care, everyone. Oh, and look, I waved. Take care, everyone.